So I'm just going to jump in and again, welcome you all for being here. What we thought we would do today is just spend a little time orienting you to who TCS is, how we travel, the experience of traveling with us, and also just share some sample itineraries. I think it's fair to say that we all love travel very much and we all miss traveling, and we hope to resume traveling again in the not too distant future. So there's no better time to really start thinking about where you want to go next. But obviously keeping in mind just the world that we live in today and some of the considerations that Kareem outlined before. So moving on, just to formally introduce myself, my name is Vinita Bhatia. I've been with TCS for about 3.5 years now, and I'm a director of business development. And so I work with advisors like Kareem specifically. There are not too many Kareems out there, but we work together to really help bring awareness to who TCS is and what we do, because TCS is not a household name in the travel industry because what we offer is very niche. And so we partner together to do things like this event tonight. And that's really the job that I have. And I represent all of the products that TCS sells. So I'm going to let Anna introduce herself as well.
Thank you. So I'm Anna Hawley. I'm a manager on the luxury custom travel team. And our custom travel team, I'll talk a little bit more about it in a bit, but has started really organically based off of the needs of our guests and based off of what they were letting us know after they've returned from trips that they really want something a little bit more bespoke. So we'll talk a little bit about our differences in product lines, but I've been with TCS almost 7 years. And I'm noticing my hair's a little less gray in that picture when I started. But I'm excited to be talking with you guys today and tell you a little bit of what we have developed kind of in light of COVID and what has really inspired us to kind of get people exploring our own backyard and getting people back out into the world.
And I'm going to say before we move on that we have a special guest whose picture is not on this page, but Susan Javeski, who's one of our esteemed expedition leaders, is on this, has joined us tonight as well. So when I stop sharing my screen, you'll be able to see her, but she has been with TCS for a very long time. She's incredibly knowledgeable and our guests just love her so much. So we're really excited that she's listening in, and I say listen in, but she'll have a lot of information. So maybe she can chime in as well at some point, but that's not putting any pressure on you, Susan, don't worry. Okay, so moving on, just to give you a little history on who we are. Like I said, I wanted to just orient you guys to TCS as a brand. Some of you may be a little more familiar than others with who we are and what we do, but we've actually been around for about 25 years, and that's not so well known to most people. We operate on a normal year, which this year is not that, we operate around 20 set itineraries where we connect our guests to some of those really difficult to get to destinations around the world, destinations that they have a lot of curiosity about, but might not feel as comfortable going on their own, or those destinations that, you know, they take multiple flights, takes a couple of days to get there. It's a real pain to get there. We connect our guests, whether it's on a jet expedition or on a private custom trip through Anna's team, we connect our guests in a very seamless, luxurious, comfortable way. And we'll talk a little bit more about that experience in a bit. But I will say that, you know, in terms of jet expeditions, this is really our core business and what we do. We are experts in the operations of and execution of luxury jet tours, whether that's a set expedition or a private trip. It's what we're known for and what we do. See? Something we're never shy about mentioning as well is our recognition in the industry. And we do point this out just because, again, we travel with, on any given year, maybe around 1,200 guests, give or take. So we're not a household name, and we just love the recognition because it's real affirmation of what we do and the type of experience that we provide. So in 2017, we won World's Best Tour Operator from Travel and Leisure. We've been a finalist every year since then. We've been recognized by Afar, Condé Nast, Departures. So these are awards that we take a lot of pride in. And again, it's just further affirmation for what we do and our brand overall. We're also the operator for many other jet programs. And so we point this out too, because there's a good chance that there's a jet expedition that you've seen, we're behind it. So we are the operating partner for brands like Kalos Golf, YPO, Smithsonian, a lot of the alumni institutions. And we are also the operating partner for the Four Seasons private jet experience. So many people might recognize that jet or those itineraries. That's a partnership that we created in collaboration with Four Seasons. We designed that jet with them from day one. And so we do around 3 to 4 itineraries per year with Four Seasons, where the trips stay exclusively at Four Seasons properties. And then we operate a number of other trips throughout the year that are either TCS branded or with our partners. And those go to destinations around the world, oftentimes staying in Four Seasons, sometimes not. So between Anna and I, we talk about 2 different ways to travel with TCS, and we've alluded to both of them. The first are our all-inclusive jet expeditions. So these, again, are the itineraries. I know I sound a little bit redundant. They tend to be around 2 to 3 weeks in length. And you'll see these on our website. And these are trips that you purchase by the seat, essentially. So we have these different departures throughout the year. They're thematic. It might be around the world. It might be, I'll show you some examples, Australia, New Zealand. It might be South America. You'll go to 6 to 10 different destinations per itinerary, traveling on our jet. It can be a country. It could be a region, like I mentioned, South America. It could be global. It really depends on the trip. Any trip you choose will have around 28 to 76 guests. Most of our trips operate with around 50 guests traveling on a customized Boeing 757. So to give you some context, a 757 will have around 233 commercial seats. We've stripped those out and we have all first class seats on the majority of our trips. So they lay flat, they're all 2x2, they're beautiful, and I think we have some photos in there as well. And the second product that we offer is luxury custom travel. And I don't want to steal Anna's thunder because we're going to go into this section first on the next slide, but these are these bespoke itineraries that we develop completely curated to your needs. So where you want to go, how you want to travel, a group of any size, any length of time, it can go anywhere in the world. And so this is really taking into account the things that interest you. And we would work with Kareem to really create an itinerary that suits exactly what you're trying to do or what your interests are. So I'm going to turn it over to Anna, I believe, on the next slide to talk about custom travel. We'll then come back to the jet experience and talk a little bit more about that as well, just to give you guys a sense of what the experience is like.
Thank you. So as I mentioned previously, our luxury custom travel team was started really organically based off of the request of our guests. So they would travel on one of our around the world trips and they would say, gosh, I loved my time in the Serengeti, but I really would love to take my grandkids back. Or I loved my stop in the Great Barrier Reef, but I really would love to see other parts of Australia. So from then we kind of said, well, maybe there's interest here to get some of our guests out into the world during those off times that they're not traveling on our jet expeditions. So from there, we have worked to develop this amazing luxury custom travel team that works with your travel advisor, Kareem, and also with you directly to create these itineraries that are completely bespoke and completely customized to you. Nothing we do is cookie cutter. Everything we try to go above and beyond and really arrange some amazing experiences that are similar to what you would get on our group trip, but a little bit maybe more appropriate for a group of 2 or a group of 5 or even a group of 10, depending on what you're looking for. We try to arrange we try to arrange these journeys to be as all-inclusive as possible. So we're going to include a private guide, private vehicle, accommodations. We will include your gratuities, meals, really everything that you want included. We can pretty much take care of it and make sure that it's included in your journey. And as I mentioned, everything is created completely custom and from scratch based on your needs. So you're not going to get a cookie cutter itinerary that your friends have traveled on. You really get to work with our dedicated travel consultants to really specify what you're looking for, what your interests are, how you like to travel. And we work with you guys to really figure out what the best experience is going to be for you to give you the best overall time in each country. Benita, you want to go to the next slide? So designing a trip with us is really actually quite simple. So simply let Kareem know where you're looking to travel. He will then kind of have a conversation with us about what you're looking for. If you'd like to do a three-way call with all three of us, I know Kareem, as your travel advisor, probably knows your travel nuances better than maybe you even know them yourself. So he can definitely kind of add some great insight as to what you typically like, what you're looking for, how you like to travel. If you like to usually travel by private vehicle, or you like trains, or you're interested in private jets. Maybe you really only like doing tours in the morning. Maybe you only like doing one in-depth tour in each city and you really like being on your own for the other part of the time. Whatever that day-by-day experience looks like, we'll have a great conversation about what it looks like, and we'll create something that is completely customized to you. The best thing there too is that we can do little tweaks along the way. If you come back and you say, you know what, I love that time in Paris, but I actually want a couple more days. Or, I really don't know that I need to be with a guide for all of that amount of time. Or maybe, you know what, I really want a little bit more art in the experience, or I want a little bit more shopping. Whatever it is, we can definitely work together to find something that is created and completely customized for you. We can also incorporate things like villas, yachts, private jets, kind of creating an overall encompassing experience for you wherever in the world you'd like to travel. It's also important to note that our travel consultants are not divided up based on region. So you'll get to know that travel consultant that you and Kareem are working with and really build a relationship with them. They'll also get to know you and what you are looking for, so that regardless of where you're wanting to travel, not only does Kareem know he has a trusted partner to come to, but you know who he's working with, and really getting the best experience possible as well. So that's a little bit about the process of how we kind of work together. Vanita, if you'll go to the next slide. I want to talk a little bit more about what is included in our programs and what can be added. So as I mentioned, everything, we try to make them as all-inclusive as possible. We've got 5-star accommodations. We work with you to figure out, do you like boutique style properties? Do you like large Western style hotels? Are you interested in private homes because you are trying to avoid hotels right now? That's actually something really common we're getting these days. We include private transportation, VIP meet and greet wherever available, private local guides. We do not use any expat guides, and we're always going to use someone who is based in the destination where you're visiting. That way they can really bring the destination to life using their own personal experiences. We try to add in as many exclusive experiences as possible, and meet and greets with local artists or with a local atelier at a shop. Whatever your interests are, we can kind of add some things to really enhance the experience. Maybe it's golf, maybe it's luxury cars, maybe it's wine. We can really kind of enhance the experience and include some really special meet and greets along the way. I actually want to point out this picture here. This is a lunch that we set up on the Bolivian salt flats for a group. We were able to get a local artist named Gaston Ugalde, who is a Bolivian artist, to do an art installation for the guests, and they had a lunch that was set up after walking through the art installation. So things like this, again, they don't come every day and they're not a part of every itinerary. So, we really work together to make sure it's a really exclusive experience for you. Again, gratuities, we understand that it is a headache to try to figure out, who do I need to tip? How much should I be tipping them? Certain guests of ours also really like the act of handing over a tip. So if it means we send you enough cash and tell you how much to tip, we can kind of hold your hand that way as well. Breakfast every day, of course, is included, and a 24-hour local contact, so that you know that you have someone there who is your advocate on the ground, no matter what. Again, we can also assist with commercial air, private jets, yachts, villas, babysitting services, security, if you've got, special needs for any of that, special meals, dietary requirements. Pretty much if you name it, we have either already done it, or we're more than happy to explore how we can make sure it's added into your itinerary.
Anna, before we move on, something that we don't have on the slide because it's really so individualized, but really special, is we also add on things that are just complete surprises and delights. So they're not things that you would necessarily know about, or maybe they're things you'd want to arrange for the people you're traveling with, but we would work with Kareem to understand, is there a special occasion or, you know, what's happening, and we add these things on. And I wonder if you could just give like a couple of examples, like the pajama party or New Zealand or something.
Yeah, absolutely. So we had a family, it was a patriarch. I think he was 90 and he took his whole family. There were 33 people in total that chartered a jet to go to Scotland. And we arranged a pajama party on the way to get them excited for their trip, and get all the little kiddos excited to go. And that was an amazing experience. You know, we also had people go to Scotland, and I worked with one person to arrange the trip, and she paid for all of her friends to go. And the last night of their trip, we had a bagpiper and a local storyteller come and be a part of their cocktail hour. Again, they don't necessarily have to be the most over-the-top experiences. You know, it could just be maybe you have a 3-hour drive over the course of a day. You know, we might stop partway through and just do a nice champagne toast at a nice stopping point. You know, it doesn't necessarily have to be the biggest thing in the world, but we also have arranged to have guests Christmas presents flown out to their home that they were staying at in New Zealand, so that their grandkids knew Santa was still going to visit them on Christmas. And we had customized ornaments on their Christmas tree for them so that they knew Santa knew exactly where they were. So we can kind of arrange things big or small, whatever it is. And we try to put a small portion of our budget for each of those programs to kind of arrange some sort of unique experience that is really the TCS way, as we like to call
it. Okay.
So from our custom trips that we have been doing for many years, almost 10 years now, we've started to get people who have said, you know, what would really be amazing is to combine the best of our jet itineraries and the best of our custom trips and create a custom jet trip. So exactly what the guests have asked for, we have delivered, and we are now able to create custom private jet trips based exactly on what our guests are looking for. So whether it's taking one of our around the world by private jet journeys and customizing it for 2 people, or taking a regionally focused itinerary and going really in depth into a region, or maybe it's just exploring different corners of North America, which I'll talk about in a second, we're really able to add all of the elements of the experience that the guests are looking for. We're also finding right now that based on everything happening in the world, guests are a little bit wary of traveling with people that they don't know. So the idea for these custom jet trips is that you are choosing the people that you're traveling with, and you're choosing where you're going. So the itinerary is completely customized to your group and your desires. And then we source an aircraft that is appropriate for the group size. So if you only have 4 people, maybe we'll find a plane that has 8 seats to ensure that there's plenty of room for everyone, but we're not going to put you in a plane that has 50 seats. So we're really able to work with you and Kareem to figure out exactly the destinations that you're wanting to go, what destinations really are best suited for a private jet. Where is that value going to be? You know, if there's 15 flights a day that are commercial into a destination, it may not make sense to have a private jet. But if you have to take 4 stops to get somewhere, the value of having that private jet is instantly there. So we'll talk through kind of what those destinations are and really get you familiar with what we're able to arrange. And, you know, they're fantastic programs. I'm really excited to be in charge of it and kind of running it. So we'll tell you a little bit more about some sample itineraries operated in this way in a bit. So based on feedback from our guests and travel advisors we've been working with, we have actually created some custom jet trips to get people back into the world in the interim before we start our jet itineraries again, which are starting at the beginning of 2021. So we've created about 9 North America itineraries that are designed to be your group of travelers. And you are able to select the dates and you are able to customize the journey. So we've created a 9 to 11 day itinerary with what could be possible. Maybe you would like to shorten it. Maybe you only want to be there 7 days. Maybe you'd only like to go to one destination. But we're really trying to give you the ideas to say, oh, wow, I never really thought of going to, Seattle or the San Juan Islands, or I never really thought of going to Canada by private jet, or I never thought it would be possible to go to the national parks and connect all of these places in these unique ways. So here are just a couple of the examples of the itineraries that we are developing. We've got 3 or 4 that I'll talk a little bit more in depth about in just a little bit. But we're coming out with new ones of these itineraries pretty much every week, it seems. We've got a team of people who have completely shifted their job basically to develop these itineraries and really utilize the resources that we have in our own backyard. And it has been so fantastic to put them together, and people are really excited about it. So I'm excited to tell you a little bit more about these, but the good thing to know is that they are completely customizable to you and your needs and your comfort level. So it really becomes all about you at the end of the day, that's the best thing when you're traveling, I think.
Okay, so we're going to shift gears, and I'm going to spend just a few minutes talking about our jet expedition. So that's the other part of our business, the set itineraries that I was mentioning earlier. I think it's just helpful to bring the experience to life a little bit and talk about what it means, because obviously the brochures are beautiful, the images are beautiful, but what does it really mean to be on the jet? Normally this would be about 10 different slides, but I'm collapsing it just in the interest of time. I don't want to bore everyone to tears, but when you travel on one of our expeditions, I just want you guys to have a sense of what that really means. Obviously the jet is beautiful, the hotels are beautiful, all of that, but how does it really affect you day to day in the travel experience? And so on any one of our expeditions, you're going to have direct nonstop flights, private FBOs, expedited security wherever possible. So imagine that it might take 2 days to get to Tanzania normally. Well, with us, you're traveling on the jet, you're leaving, let's say, Agra or Jaipur, it's a 7-hour flight, and it's just so much easier. So you're not having to have layovers and transfers, etc. We do tours in small groups. So that's a question that we get asked a lot. Am I with 50 people traveling through Petra? And the answer is no. You're in a small group of around 8 people, usually, sometimes less, English-speaking guides. We can always arrange private tours as well. Or if there's something you've already seen and you want to do something entirely different, you've already seen the Taj Mahal and you want to go do a shopping tour for the day, we can arrange that. You have an expedition staff. So as I mentioned, our colleague Susan is on the phone today. They are attending to your every need. So if you want to change your tour, if you're not happy with your room, that person is there to make sure you're having the best experience possible. They are so experienced. They've been with us forever, know our local teams. So they really handle everything for us. There's a luggage handler. So you don't have to carry your luggage from the plane to the room. It's taken there for you. There's a chef who can handle any dietary restriction, making fresh food on the plane. There's a physician on every trip, a dedicated flight crew. Obviously, these days, in the times of the pandemic, just knowing that there's a physician on board when we start operating trips again gives everyone peace of mind. They know all of our guests' medical history, they carry medication, so they're there for your comfort. We don't have any overnight flights, and this is important. We want our guests to be well rested for their touring the next day. So, we fly west, we're catching up on time, we're minimizing jet lag, and then you're sleeping in a very comfortable hotel bed so that you are getting the rest you need and maximizing every day in each destination. Similar to our custom trips, the pricing is all inclusive. So the joke we always say is, if you don't shop, you can leave your wallet at home. So gratuities, tours, alcohol, all of that is taken care of. We have expert lecturers on our trips as well. So they're people that are really well known in their field. They're authors, they're mammalogists from the zoo, they're professors. They're going to educate you on the jet or in the destination about what you're going to experience on the ground and the touring that you're going to do. And they get to know our guests on a very personalized level. We have those behind the scenes access that you wouldn't get elsewhere. So imagine a private candlelit dinner at Angkor Wat with local dancers at night when it's close to the public. Things like that just you can't replicate on your own, that happen throughout every trip. And then it's the small details as well. So we fill out your landing forms for you. It's that small pain point of not having to fish for your passport and fill out those difficult forms, which I always have trouble with personally. We do all the pre-trip planning support. So with Kareem, there'll be a dedicated guest services manager understanding all of your preferences if you need any inoculations, what's the packing list? What visas do you need? We handle all of that on your behalf. We give postcards, we give locally made gifts, we give local currency. So small denominations of money, but just enough for you to be able to do shopping in each destination and not have to worry about exchanging currency for 9 different countries before you leave. And you know, it's funny, people always ask, like, what's the best part of your trips? And yes, it's so opulent. The jet's beautiful, the hotels are beautiful, it's first class all the way, but sometimes it's those little things like the $10 that we give you, the $20 that we give you in each destination. We just try to think of every pain point associated with international travel, and we try to remove it. This is our classic Around the World by Private Jet trip. And I just like to illustrate this and show this because it is a good example of what we do. And in a normal year, you know, we operate this trip at least once, sometimes twice. But just to give you an example and bring it to life for you a little more, this trip is a 24-day expedition. It begins and ends in Orlando. It then goes to Machu Picchu for 2 nights, where we stay at the Belmont. We charter the Hiram Bingham train to the top, and you tour Machu Picchu. We then go to Easter Island, where great example of a destination that people have a lot of curiosity about, but just difficult to get to. We spend 2 nights there. We then go on to Samoa. From there, we go to the Barrier Reef. We then go up to Angkor Wat in Cambodia. We go up to the Taj Mahal. And this is another good example of what we're able to create. We land at the military base in Agra, which just makes that trip much easier and more efficient. From there, we fly into Tanzania, where our guests have an option for the Serengeti or the crater. We go up to Petra and Wadi Rum in Jordan. We then go to Marrakesh, and then we come back to Orlando. And so you'll see in this trip, you're really hitting those destinations that you might want to see, but organizing a trip like that on your own just is very complex. We're flying west, so we're catching up on time. We're minimizing jet lag. The average length of flight for our trips is around 5.5 hours. There's a couple of exceptions. Obviously, you know, Easter Island to Samoa is a little bit longer, India to the Serengeti. But on any one of our itineraries, whether it's this one or another, the average flight time is going to be about 5 to 5.5 hours. In some exciting news for TCS, we actually have new jets coming out. So I mentioned earlier that most of our trips are taken on Boeing 757s. In 2021, we're going to have a new jet for TCS trips. We'll also have a new jet for Four Seasons trips. They're both Airbus 321s. You can see some interior photos. On the TCS jet, it'll be around 56, I believe, first class seats. On the Four Seasons jet, it'll be 48. And you can see why. There's a small lounge area in the back where they're going to have, you know, experts, mixologists, wellness experts, just providing additional content and experiences on the jet. And if I go to the next slide, you'll see some other interior photos and why we're just so excited about these jets. They are literally being built as we speak. We've got custom leather handcrafted seats being made in Italy. It's a large enough cabin in terms of comfort, height, and width, larger lavatories, Wi-Fi, galleys, more fuel efficient than the Boeing 757, which is something that we're very excited about. And these jets, what's also wonderful is that they have the range that we need, but they also have the ability to land in some of those smaller airports that we tend to travel to. So really big, exciting news for us. We just wanted to share that with you as well. So you know that, you know, as we go into 2021 and as we start resuming jet expeditions, you're going to be on these really beautiful new jets. I wanted to also just give a few examples of expeditions that we have scheduled in 2021 before we go into some sample itineraries for custom travel. You know, it's obviously a very dynamic situation right now with COVID-19. You know, what we will say is that we are very sensitive to and mindful of the situation, and we are working diligently day and night to understand what we need to do to ensure everyone is safe and secure and healthy on our trips. That said, you know, we have scheduled trips starting in 2021. We've canceled our expeditions through the end of this year. You know, when you travel with us, you do have a physician. You are on this contained plane with the same guests, the same expedition staff and crew. They're taking care of you. So as you consider travel next year, when international travel really does resume, you know, we would certainly encourage you to consider a jet expedition. If you're taking a lot of luxury cruises, if you're flying first class, this might be a really good option. And you can see 3 examples of trips that we are planning to operate next year. Australia, New Zealand is continually popular. You know, not easy to get to. It's a long flight. We really cover the best of the best in those destinations. And that trip is in April. We also have a trip called Legends and Empires, which is personally one of my favorites because this is some of those really esoteric destinations like Turkmenistan, which if you've never been, I highly recommend going, but going on a jet expedition because it's a little strange but fascinating. But you also go to places like Kyrgyzstan, Uzbekistan, San Sebastian, one of my favorite destinations in the world. So that is an itinerary that we're operating in April as well. Then we have a trip called World of Adventures. This is actually a 4 seasons jet expedition. So this is a really wonderful trip that gives you some really cool destinations. So it starts in Seattle, it ends in Miami, but you're going to Kyoto, you're going to see the gorillas in Rwanda, you're going to the Galapagos Islands. So again, 3 very varying itineraries. On our website, we have our schedule of trips that we're hoping to operate next year. If you have any questions about any of these, obviously reach out to Kareem and I can provide him and you with any of the information that you need about any of these or others that we're operating as well. So I know I went through that pretty quickly, but I want to turn it back over to Anna because we have some really exciting sample itineraries for custom travel by private jet as well. So Anna, I'm going to just go to the next slide so you can go through these pretty quickly also.
I'm muted. Yeah, so we're really excited about these itineraries. As I mentioned, we've kind of shifted gears from focus really on our jet programs, and now we're focused primarily on these custom travel by private jet itineraries, at least for the remainder of the year. You know, we think that travel will come back in the fall, hopefully. Our fingers are crossed, but ultimately, you know, the safety and security of our guests is going to be our #1 priority. So we won't send you anywhere that you can't go and that we don't think is safe to go. So that's something to keep in mind with all of our trips. We're always going to make sure that we're working with you and Kareem to figure out what the best experience is overall. So I'll dive into some of these amazing itineraries that we've been creating. The first is the Alaskan Wilderness by Private Air. And this journey will start in Anchorage, where you'll go to Girdwood. It's a 10-day itinerary. From there, you go to the Finger Lake region, and then to Kachemak Bay. We'll be able to do bear viewing and fishing and kayaking. And it's really kind of this focus on wilderness and wildlife and getting you out into the great outdoors again. Again, Alaska is one of those places that's kind of a question mark to a lot of people, especially depending on where you are. I know I'm from Seattle, so I've been, but only once. So it's kind of this, this unknown gem that we're really excited to kind of uncover some amazing corners of this beautiful, beautiful habitat. The journey will then end in Anchorage, where you'll get to explore the city and also explore some wildlife nearby. So again, this is all about, you know, getting back to nature, exploring the great outdoors, and being in wide open spaces, which I know that's something we're hearing from our guests that they're really interested in, is not being confined to a city necessarily, but being a place that is really really focused on being outside. So that's the first itinerary. The second, and this is the one I'm actually most excited about because it's where I'm from and it's my own backyard. So the Pacific Northwest by private jet. This journey will start in Seattle, where you'll get a behind-the-scenes tour of the Pike Place Market. You get to throw the fish and do kind of the quintessential Seattle experience before heading up to Bellingham, where you'll board a private yacht to explore the San Juan Islands for 3 nights. From there, you will be able to fly to Gold Beach, Oregon, which is down on the south coast of Oregon, almost California border. It's very close to Bandon Dunes if we have any golfers among us. It's one of the best golf resorts in the country, really a big highlight for a lot of golfers. And then from there, you'll go into Central Oregon to explore a beautiful ranch, do some horseback riding, hiking, fly fishing if you're interested. Again, there's more golf. And then we have an optional extension to the Willamette Valley to do some amazing wine tasting, which again, hard to beat when you've been cooped up for a while. So again, this is Pacific Northwest by private jet. And one thing I'll mention with all of these itineraries, they're designed to start and end in a place and to get you to that starting point privately as well. So we've based these costs on a jet that will get you, it's based on Los Angeles, just as a good kind of central point. So if you're coming from elsewhere, we can of course adjust that pricing. The other thing to keep in mind with all of these itineraries is that they are completely custom. If you want to do the Pacific Northwest itinerary, but you really only have 5 days and you kind of just say, you know, the San Juans and Seattle is really just my focus, or I just want to go to Oregon, then, you know, of course we can customize that based on the needs of you and your traveling companions. This U.S. National Park trip is another one that I'm really passionate about, and I think is, you know, don't get me wrong, I think all of them are fantastic, so it's hard for me to pick a favorite. But I think the national parks are one of those things that so many people have, we know it's in our own backyard, but we've never fully explored. So this itinerary is really going to add the value of having a private jet. It's going to start in Jackson Hole, Wyoming, and it is going to go to Grand Teton and Yellowstone. It's going to go to Arches down in Utah and Canyonlands, Bryce Canyon and Zion, and then end off in Arizona and go to the Grand Canyon and the Glen Canyon National Recreation Area. So this itinerary is going to bypass large airports using small regional airports. Again, you can only get into those using a small plane or a private plane. So again, you're going to add that value back in of having that private plane and really maximizing your stay and really maximizing the efficiency of the journey. For anyone who's ever tried to plan a trip to the national parks, you'll understand that the accommodations sometimes leave a lot to be desired. They are owned and operated by the national parks themselves. So what we've done in this itinerary is we've utilized private accommodations as opposed to those public, national park based accommodations. So we're going to use properties like the Amangiri and the Amangani and a private ranch in Zion. There's also the ability, if you and your family are interested, to stay under the stars. We have access to a mobile tented camp where you can stay outside of any of the national parks. We set up a tented camp just like in Africa, but just for you and your family in the national park. So this is an amazing itinerary to really, again, connect you with nature. We can be as active or as inactive as you want. It's definitely an itinerary that has a little bit of activity to it. But of course, we can customize it based on the needs of your family and your group. I've got 2 more to talk through. The next one is U.S. Art by Private Jet. And this itinerary we actually started developing before COVID. So it was kind of one we were happy to have in our back pocket. So this is going to really uncover some of the most amazing art destinations in the U.S. So this is going to start in New York. You'll get a private visit to the Metropolitan Museum. Then you'll go to Washington, D.C., where you'll have a private visit of the National Portrait Gallery. From there, you'll fly to Bentonville, Arkansas. Again, really adding the value of having a private jet. Getting to Arkansas is not the easiest thing in the world, so you really want to maximize the efficiency and get there. You'll be able to visit the Crystal Bridges American Museum of Art, which is pictured here below. From there, you'll be able to fly directly to Marfa, Texas. Again, it is one of those places that is very challenging to get to, but a lot of people are curious about. It is a place worth spending a little bit of time, not a ton, so you can get in and get out and on to Santa Fe to go visit the beautiful Georgia O'Keeffe Museum, and then round off the experience in San Francisco. So again, the idea for this itinerary is to really connect East Coast to West Coast. If you'd like to trim it down just to be part of it, or to be a little bit longer, even to extend it to have a little bit more time, that is absolutely ideal as well. The other thing to keep in mind with all of these itineraries, depending on the group size, we're also able to add an expedition leader to really be there and be your eyes and ears on the ground, and also kind of take care of all of the little pain points that you may need. So whether that is, assisting with touring, or they are making sure that the hotel is ready for check-in when you get there. For groups that are larger than about 6, we recommend at least having the conversation about having an expedition leader with you to really take care of all of those details, so you're not having to worry about anything along the way. And then I'll talk about the last itinerary. And unfortunately, I put this last because Canada is not yet open to Americans. and we don't know when it will be. Our fingers are crossed that it will be sooner rather than later. But this itinerary is really just kind of connecting you with some beautiful places in Western Canada. So it's going to start in Calgary, where you'll get to explore Banff and Lake Louise and Lake Morian, which is right here on the bottom. From there, you will be able to fly privately to the Okanagan Valley. You'll fly into Kelowna. Again, this is a great value, getting to connect these destinations on your timetable, being able to bypass commercial airports and commercial flights, and really getting the best experience possible. You'll be able to uncover some of the beautiful wineries of the Okanagan Valley in British Columbia. From there, we'll fly you to Vancouver, where you'll hop on a private seaplane to go to Nemo Bay, which is a fly-in, fly-out accommodation on Vancouver Island. And it is one of the most gorgeous places that I've ever been. It is just exclusive and very, it's just peaceful. It's a peaceful place. So there you'll be able to do fly fishing and heli hiking and heli fishing, and they have a spa, and it's just an absolute fantastic destination just outside of Vancouver. So again, these are all, the idea is you'll see there's a familiar theme with these, with the exception of our art tour. They're really all about nature. They're all about getting you outside. They're all about getting you outside of the cities, getting you maybe outside of your comfort zone. Perfect for families, perfect for small groups. You know, maybe it's 3 or 4 couples that are, you know, ready to travel together because they're in the same quarantine bubble. These are really, you know, something that can get people out there and get them a little bit more comfortable with travel again.
Okay, so that's all we have. I'm going to stop sharing my screen because I think we have some questions and I wanted to make sure we left time for that. Let me just pause there and turn it back over to you, Kareem.
Sure, I'll jump right in. Thank you, ladies, for such a great presentation. I know I'm so ready to go to all of those places. Especially the ones you're
ready to go.
Yeah, I've been dying to go to Crystal Bridges, you know, personally for years and years. So thank you for that, for inspiring all of us. And I'll open it up to questions in a second, but I did get some questions in advance, which I think may be shared. So I wanted to go ahead with those. And 2 are kind of housekeeping things, and I'll just give them both to you at the same time, about, you know, the planning process. So with the customized journeys, what's the window? So if, you know, I'm ready to go now, could I say, can we do this next week? So just give us a sense of the reality of availabilities, with things still opening right now, with maybe things being booked. And then second question, with the expedition stuff, same thing. How far in advance do you have to book? Because obviously these are once in a lifetime trips, just 50 seats. So are we looking to book for 2022 at this point, or is there still availability for 21?
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. Thanks so much for those questions. They're really relevant right now, I think, especially we're getting people who say, I want to go, but is it possible? Am I even able to go? So based on what we're experiencing right now, the demand for the national parks has been huge. And so unfortunately, the properties are they're only operating at 50% occupancy right now. So those are going to be a little bit more limited. For August and September, they're pretty full already. It doesn't mean it's impossible. So we always kind of say, give us a call and let us know what you're interested in, because it may be possible. It may be we have to reverse the itinerary, or we have to be a little bit creative about where we're going when. But if you are flexible on your dates, then usually we can make something happen. What I would say, the peak time for most of these itineraries is going to be kind of summer to late fall months that we are offering. Again, I think Pacific Northwest, again, is probably best during the spring and summer months. So thinking ahead to maybe next year or even later this fall, I think you're definitely right in that window of when it's going to be a perfect time to book. So again, we never know until we try and check on availability. We don't hold any space in advance. So again, it is on a first come, first serve basis, but we're always willing to kind of give it a whirl and see what we can find.
Mm-hmm. Thanks, Anna.
And then Vineet, I'll let you go on the jet trips.
Yeah, so on the jet trips, at the end of the day, the limitation is what visas do we need and the lead time for that. So, we always say like the cutoff is going to be 2 months before an expedition. But that said, depending on the itinerary, yeah, I mean, oftentimes they do sell out. For 2021, given the anomaly that we're all living through right now, we certainly have availability. I think there are 2 Four Seasons departures in the fall that are waitlisted. But generally speaking, we are operating less trips next year overall than we would in a normal year. I think the majority of our trips do have availability, some more so than others. In a normal time, certain trips like our classic around the world, Australia, New Zealand, they tend to be very popular and they might sell out sooner. We release our trips normally about a year and a half in advance, if we can do that. And so that's really when they're for sale and people can start booking. Depending on the itinerary, it tends to be more popular, but certainly the ultimate cutoff is going to be when those visas are required.
Yeah. Great.
One thing I want to mention too, I forgot to mention this during the presentation, but regarding the jet expeditions, I also want to say, as Anna was talking about the private jet, the custom trips and the groups, we have a lot of solo travelers on our jet expeditions too. If you are someone who's curious about the world but might not feel as comfortable traveling on your own commercially, our expeditions are a great way to do that. About 20% of our guests are single travelers. The majority of them are female. As a single female traveler myself, I appreciate that. But I just wanted to mention that because it really provides a great way to travel and not feel constrained. And our solo supplement is very low. It's only 10%. So I just wanted to mention that. I know it's a little out of place in the dialogue, but it's important.
No, that's a good point, Vanita. Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
There are a few other questions that I had pooled, but I don't want to hog the Q&A. So I'll prep the next question, but then I'll open it to the group. Something I've known Vanita for several years now, and I've had lots of great conversations with her, and something I want to put her on the spot to share is she has so many great stories. She shared some during the presentation, but I think an interview I did with you recently, you shared, a touching experience from a guest. And I thought, in the context of the call, it might be nice for everyone to hear what people value and, what has been shared with you.
It's a great question. And I think Anna and I probably have so many examples between us. Susan in particular, being on the trips, probably has the best examples amongst us. I will say, I was on a trip a couple years ago, and this is like such a small, silly story, but there was a couple that was really lovely, and they loved Reese's peanut butter cups, and they asked for them on the first leg of the flight, and every time they got back on that jet, there were Reese's peanut butter cups on their seat. And I give that example because it just shows that we listen and our attention to detail. That expedition staff, that flight crew, they get to know everyone so personally. On the flip side, I was at an event a few years ago in Arizona where there was a guest who talked about the fact that in Tibet, she was having trouble with the altitude and was really concerned for her health and felt like she nearly died. Whether or not that's actually true, I don't know. But having that physician with the group and being able to tend to her was just so helpful to her on the trip. It just gave her so much comfort. I was on a trip 3 years ago where 2 people had to go to a hospital. One lost a prescription, one had a scratch on her eye, but just having someone there really helped. And so I give those polarizing examples of things that can be very little and seemingly silly, but just show that we're listening and that we care about your experience, to those larger examples where, we're really stepping in and helping our guests ensure that they're safe and well and healthy. I'd love for Susan to give it. I don't know, I'm putting you on the spot, Susan, but being an expedition lead, you probably have a really great example as well, or many.
Hello, everyone. Well, I wasn't expecting to say anything. That's okay. I guess what strikes me the most are, and this is just anecdotal, are the high percentage of repeat travelers we have. And our guests, I kind of have to chuckle because they'll show up at our check-in. They're getting ready to go around the world by private jet. We saw 80 days around the world in 80 days. We saw the bucket list. So people really don't know what to expect. They just know they're in for a journey. They're prepared. And what unfolds ahead of them is indescribable. because really the opportunity to see the world and see, it changes your perspective. It changes how you see yourself in the world, because it's a very different experience when you're laying one culture, one experience on another. And truly, Around the World by Private Jet is literally 28,000 miles around the world, except through the continental United States. So I defy anyone to go on one of these journeys and not have their worldview altered. And I think that is what's really important to people. But you can't describe it because every person, their experience is different. But when I look at our survey results and the high satisfaction levels, when I look at repeat customers, actually I'm going to lead the Australia and New Zealand trip, and we'll have close to 75% of the group already have been on the Around the World by Private Jet trip. And we take them to Australia, but they want a deeper cut of that continent. And Vanita, you mentioned the solo travelers. It's really heartwarming when especially two solo travelers hook up and they become travel buddies and they book again on another trip. And the connections that people make with each other is an unexpected delight. So it's truly an expedition. It's truly a life-altering experience. How do you describe that? You can't. I find that a lot of travelers are there because they had seen our brochures, they had seen our emails, but not until like their cousin or their neighbor or someone that they knew gave them a personal recommendation. Did they say, okay, because it's a lot of dough. Did they say, okay, we're going to do this? And almost like a leap of faith. And I don't think we've had any travelers say that it wasn't a value based on the experience, based on the efficiency. Yeah. So it's a wonderful thing. And I'm just so proud to work for the company and what we do for people.
Thank you. Well, I want to be respectful of everyone's time. And if there aren't any further questions, I
have a question. But
please, Joyce.
I have to get off at 6, but I am really concerned still about, I'm sure like everybody else, this COVID. And what is the protocol now for your planes and the places that we go? And what happens if we're interested in a particular trip, put money down on it, and then we find out that Americans are not welcome? We know that in Europe. But the way that we're handling COVID in our country, if I was in another country, I wouldn't want us over there. So just curious about how, what the thinking is along those lines right now.
Certainly, yeah. Yeah, I mean, and I'm happy to jump in, but I don't know.
Yeah, go for it.
Yeah, so it's a great question, Joyce, and thank you for asking, because it's obviously very top of mind. And I think that in and of itself speaks to why we're not even operating any expeditions on our jets through the end of this year, because we know that realistically, until the world opens up, the complications and complexity of operating a multi-country trip is just nearly impossible. It's like playing the worst game of chess where you're trying to manage who has been where, what countries we can get into. It is a very fluid conversation that we're having day in and day out internally to understand, what are the right things that we should be doing for our guests, for our crew, for the expedition staff, to make sure that they're all healthy. The beauty of traveling on one of our jet expeditions, and this has happened more than once, is that we can always divert. We always have a plan B. There's always a plan C, so that if something does come up and we can't go to some place in our itinerary, we already have a backup option. So in terms of the actual trip experience, that's how we're thinking about it, and that's how we've always operated. If we have to cancel a trip, through COVID, particularly in March, April, it was a very personalized conversation with every guest to understand, to explain to them what's happening. Are we going to cancel? Would they prefer to place their money with us in escrow and have a future trip credit, or would they like a refund? And that was a very flexible conversation that we had. As we move forward, we're trying to get a little smarter about how we're doing that. So if we cancel a trip, you'll have the option for a refund. So it's one of those things that we're continually working through, but we're very mindful of, and we know it's not a small amount of money. So ultimately, it's a conversation we're going to have with every guest on an individual level. So I'm not sure if I hope that helps answer it a little bit, to say that it's a work in progress, but something that's top of mind.
Yeah, it helps. It helps some. And, hearing that you can get refunds, because we've had issues when you get insurance and then the insurance says, well, right, it's a pandemic, we don't cover that.
We don't like that.
I've got money tied up now from trips that I chose not to take because of COVID, but I haven't, one trip I got my money back, and another travel, we still have it tied up.
Yeah.
So it's just curious there. But then, just sanitizing and all that stuff with your planes and the facility.
Right. I can speak to that a little bit. I was actually on a Four Seasons trip that we returned to Paris after completing the itinerary on March 10th. So it was just as COVID was heating up, and we had made the decision to completely sanitize our jets before all of our guests arrived. All of the bathrooms were sanitized several times. All the touch points were sanitized. So that's, I think, a real testimony to the opportunity to travel by private jet, because we are in charge of that. And so that's what we did, just from the aircraft perspective. And I know Four Seasons, and other hotels are doing additional sanitizing, and we made it through with actually no illnesses on that trip. So it was really noticeable, just that extra sanitation in the health of our travelers.
Okay, thank you.
I'll jump into Vanita quickly, and then Leonard, I just wanted to address Joyce's question once more, in that I can say, and I hope I'm not speaking out of turn, we certainly had travelers booked on trips with TCS when this happened, and every company is obviously in a different place with their policies, so I don't want to speak to what other companies can and can't do, but I can say that TCS really was a leader, and thanks to Vanita and the team. But we had that scenario, Joyce, where we had people that had placed deposits on trips and multiple trips, and TCS came through. And like Vanita said, I can truly say that in one case, they wanted to move the trip to next year. Great, booked that trip, they're all set. The other case, they wanted their money back, and there was no question. The only question was, how should we wire the funds, or do you want it back on your credit card? I mean, so I think that's important. And
it is. It is a lot of money.
Yeah.
Thanks, Chris. I forgot that we had them on Lands of the Midnight Sun. I forgot. Yeah.
So I don't understand how you get to the destination departure point from where you live.
Yeah, so that's a great question. So you do fly commercially or you can fly however you want to the starting point of a trip. So if the trip begins and ends in Orlando, then that's a separate cost, separate from the price of the trip. And we can help you organize with Kareem however you want to get there. So it would be a private flight or a commercial flight, but that's separate from, once you're at the starting point of the trip, everything is covered and taken care of.
And along with that, say for example, you have a trip which is basically in Europe. Why would you fly west to go east?
For a Europe itinerary, that's the exception to that. That if we're starting a trip in Europe, usually we would start the trip. I think we have one trip that's going to Iceland, Norway, kind of Lands of the Midnight Sun. That would start in New York, but the majority of the Europe trips would start in Europe, so that it would allow you a little bit of flexibility to get there maybe a couple of days early, take a load off, relax a little bit, and then start the expedition. So it's just for those around the world itineraries where we really try to emphasize flying west, so that you're not constantly, backing up on time, and it's really, it's working in your favor.
Thank you.
If you're flying east from New York, do you fly during the day?
Yes.
I think there are very few examples of that, actually. I feel like that might be
it's not super common, but on the one itinerary, I know we are flying during the day. Again, it's really important to us that people sleep in a bed at night. It seems like, oh, well, we sleep on planes a lot, but when you're doing it for 24 days in a row, it suddenly is not super appetizing. So I think it is an important thing to think about really important to us what that guest experience looks like overall.
Great. Well, thank you both again so much, Vanita and Anna, and also Susan for being with us. I think you really added a lot. And I miss all of you so much. Thanks everyone for taking the time to be with us this evening, and hopefully we'll see each other soon, and we'll all be traveling again soon.
Okay.
Yeah, fingers crossed we'll be able to see you all in a in-person
Thank
event
you.
sometime.
We certainly appreciate the time. Thanks, Kareem, for organizing.
Thanks so much.
Bye everyone.
Bye, take care.
Good night.